West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
It's been more than 2 years since a mob of Trump supporters stormed the Capitol. To date, the Department of Justice has arrested more than 1,000 Trump supporters, with more than half of them pleading guilty for their crimes. The former president, who lost to President Biden, continues to falsely claim that he actually won the election. And now he blames his former vice president for the events of that day, because Mike Pence dared to follow the law. Still, the FBI has arrested just a small fraction of the more than 3,000 people who could be charged. More than 1,000 additional people could still face charges, and at least 250 suspects are still wanted by the Bureau for assaulting officers. Despite what we saw, Tucker Swanson Carlson, to be exact, released cherry-picked video to rewrite the truth and claimed that what we saw was in fact peaceful, and the people who stormed the Capitol were sightseers, not insurrectionists. As for the QAnon shaman guy, Jacob Chansley, who Tucker went to great lengths to defend as a police-escorted visitor, well, on Sunday, the DOJ said that Tucker omitted what he really did, which includes this lovely video of Chansley and others forcibly entering the Capitol.
Everybody inside!
Peaceful tourism. This week, we got even more video from the DOJ, which shows us how those meek sightseers came within feet of Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley, who, as Senate President pro tem, was third in line for the presidency. Here he is behind the officers, surrounded by a security detail, trying to escape the sightseers who came ready to murder Mike Pence and were within feet of assaulting Grassley. Tucker Carlson tells us we should not believe those images. But every single day, the Department of Justice arrests a new insurrectionist and releases a cache of footage that reminds us that this wasn't some benign tour of the Capitol, but rather exactly what we watched live, a violent siege on our democracy.
We are not losing the U.S. Capitol today. Do you hear me? We are not losing the U.S. Capitol.
Joining me now is Congressman Adam Schiff of California, a former member of the January 6th Select Committee. He's also a candidate for U.S. Senate in California. Congressman Schiff, I must get your reaction to the fact that despite Tucker Carlson clearly lying about that footage and distorting it, and distorting specifically the Jacob Chansley crimes, which he's guilty of and he's serving time for, Kevin McCarthy's still defending giving him the footage. Your thoughts?
Well, this is part of McCarthy's deal to get the speakership, which is to give this video footage to this propagandist on Fox. And it just shows how the speaker is willing to sacrifice not just the truth, but the security of the very institution of which he is now the speaker in order to curry favor to the most extreme or from the most extreme members of his conference. But it's so important to continue showing this footage because Tucker Carlson uses that megaphone to lie and lie and lie to the American people. And as we've seen in the Dominion voting litigation, emails and texts from Tucker Carlson, he knows he's pushing a big lie. He shows his private disdain for Donald Trump and for the absurdity of these claims of fraud around the election. And yet he makes very clear, as does Rupert Murdoch and others, when it comes to Fox, it's just about the money. And when it comes to Kevin McCarthy, it's just about holding on to the title of Speaker and the country be damned.
Well, I mean, right. Of course, Tucker Carlson texted that he hates Trump passionately. And to your point, there was a deal that was cut for Kevin McCarthy, even though it still took him 15 votes. He made a promise to Marjorie Taylor Greene, allegedly, to investigate Speaker Pelosi and the Department of Justice to release this 40,000 hours of footage to Tucker Carlson and to authorize a subcommittee to investigating the events surrounding the Capitol breach. And also, they're talking about the people who were arrested, many of whom assaulted police officers and beat them with their own shields and tased them. They're calling them political prisoners. And some of those people who are behind bars are now using Tucker Carlson's edited footage to say, wow, we're going to get off because Tucker's helping us. This feels like quite a bit of collusion between some members of the House of Representatives, Tucker Carlson, and the people who engaged in the... Just your thoughts on all of that.
Well, it is just another page out of the Trumpist playbook, and that is when you're caught in serious wrongdoing, then you investigate the investigators. You try to discredit what you were involved in and the investigation of that by investigating the investigators. Here, they've gone to the extraordinary length of trying to persuade the country not to believe their own eyes, not to believe this footage, not to believe hundreds of police officers that were injured that day, and to make heroes out of these violent hooligans, to somehow claim they're political prisoners, to champion them. You've got the former president reportedly doing a music video with some of them. I mean, it is just absurd. But if we ever needed a modern education in the power of the big lie, that is a lie repeated over and over again, we see it today in the fact they have succeeded in persuading tens of millions of Americans that they can't believe their own eyes, they can't believe what they see. No, they've got to believe this propaganda. And it just couldn't be more dangerous if Americans can't agree on a common set of facts. Then what basis do we have to make decisions about policy and how we move the country forward?
You have people like Barry Loudermilk, who led a tour of Capitol insurrectionists and who is now heading an investigation into the investigation. Given the fact that people like Jim Jordan laughed off subpoenas from the committee that you were a part of, if you're subpoenaed, would you respond to that subpoena by doing the same and saying, fighting it, or saying, I don't have to listen to the subpoenas from Republicans?
I would respond to a legitimate subpoena. I don't know if I'll get a legitimate subpoena from that crowd. And yes, you're right. I think anyone who gets one certainly could use the defense. I'm just not going to bother to show up because these are clearly optional. That's what Jim Jordan did. But nonetheless, I think members of Congress, members of the administration should comply with legitimate oversight. The question is, are we going to see anything that even resembles legitimate oversight, or are we going to see, more of this kind of gaslighting that we're getting right now from Jordan, from this select committee on the so-called weaponization of the federal government and the like?
Let me ask you this while I have you here. You are running for Senate, for Dianne Feinstein's seat in the United States Senate. Are you concerned that this becomes a really sort of internecine food fight between three popular members of the House, maybe even four, and that in some way all of you sort of battling for that seat in some way undermines the unity of the caucus?
I am concerned about it. I don't want to see that happening. I'm keeping my message very positive. Frankly, I've got enough on my hands responding to the attacks I'm getting from Kevin McCarthy, Donald Trump, and others who are out there saying Adam Schiff should not be in the U.S. Senate. So I'm directing my fire on the other side, because that's where the danger to our democracy lies. And that's where the challenge is to our country in creating an economy that works for everyone. I would hope the other candidates do the same. We're all rivals under the same flag, and we've got more on our hands than fighting with each other.
It is Friday, the 17th of March of 2023, And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays on St. Patty's Day. So shouldn't it be a green moon? We're not going to go that far. We don't put dye in our rivers. Oh, God, no, we don't. At least I hope not. So how are you? It's St. Patty's Day, and this is supposed to be the day when a supposed saint drove the snakes out of Ireland, but apparently that's changed now. No. Apparently he didn't. And there's some question on whether there was really a St. Patrick to begin with, so how did he become a saint? Because there's quite a process to become a saint, I should tell you. Anyway, I like the story of driving the snakes out of Ireland because you have to figure out where they went. Where did those snakes go? They had to go somewhere. They're not going to be on that island of emerald green. They're going to go somewhere. Might have emigrated to here. You never know. That's right. Enslaved Irish snakes. That's right. You can't just teach the lessons of African slaves. We have to also learn about Irish slave snakes. Am I being sacrilegious? Maybe. So, how are you? I've been asking that every morning for quite a while now. I don't know why. It just seems like appropriate because it is the morning where I'm at. And we like to get our blood flowing somehow. Get our brain synapsing. Ah, boy. So what happened yesterday? What's happening today? Did you see the Russian jet spewing jet fuel onto our drone over the Black Sea? I like how the MAGA Republicans are whining that our most important concern in the midst of that is not that, we were attacked, but that it was an environmentally sound attack. You're more worried about the environment. And I'm like, yeah, why not? Remember when Saddam Hussein set ablaze all of those refineries across the Iraqi horizon? The desert out there, and for the whole horizon there were all these refineries just going up in smoke. Nice, huh? Well, that was environmental terrorism, wasn't it? Yes, it was. So what's wrong with calling it what it is? And anyway, I still don't understand what is wrong with trying to save the environment. Don't they drink the same water we do? Apparently not. Or they don't care. Okay? All right. Who knows? As long as it makes money, it's okay to do, apparently. Except if you're making money for a woke corporation. Have you ever heard such drivel? Yes, we have. They like to glom onto something and just wring every bit of life out of it, if it even has a life. It gets a life of its own, and then they wring the life out of that, too. That's all they got. That's why they keep having these copyright infringement lawsuits drawn against them, for just taking stuff that's not theirs and using it on the campaign trail without asking the artist, is it okay that, we are a goose-stepping organization. Is it okay to use your work? Oh, no, we're not going to ask that. They're goose-steppers. They don't ask, they take. Yeah. All right. So, Donald Trump's going to be in deep doo-doo if we can get him into the deep doo-doo. He's very upset, and as he gets more and more upset, that the proverbial feces is hitting that proverbial fan, and it's going to splatter over a lot of stuff. And he's been raging and ranting, and I just love the names that he calls Jack Smith. He doesn't care about currying favor with authority. He has no authority. He is the authority. So it's all part of the shtick. But it works, isn't it? I get a bit perturbed, as I mentioned, about this attacking empathy as if that's supposed to be a bad thing. Caring about the environment, caring about a child who needs an operation. Oh no, you can't have that operation. You're coming after our kids. Well, no, we're not coming after your kids. It's between the parent, the kid, and the doctor, and give me a break. But they are so anti-science, they want to push whatever, I don't know what belief system they have. It's fungible. But they want to ram it down our throats under the auspices that they are the ones who are being victimized by reality, apparently. We are the true victims because reality doesn't conform to our way of life. Really? Maybe that should be a learning situation, right? No. Their whole argument is that you are not going to teach my kid not to be a bully. Empathy is taught in the schools? What is this, a commie plot? No, it's called being a good neighbor in America. Moms of liberty. Jeez. What a bunch of BS. I mean, I got to tell you, the people who are the most upset about critical race theory and, teaching empathy in the schools, is it called DES? I'm trying to remember. Anyway, teaching equality, empathy, putting yourself in the shoes of other people. That's kind of like sympathy, but anyway. They consider that to be bad. Well, you would expect people who are bullies to complain about teaching their kids not to be bullies. What's up with that? And we're supposed to put up with it? Okay. Oh, I saw something that was actually quite exhilarating, uplifting. Gives me faith in our country, our nation, what we aspire to be. All of a sudden, I can't remember what state it was in. It might have been New Mexico, Arizona, New Mexico. But regardless, it was a school district board meeting, a school board meeting. And it was taken over by a bunch of what was described as Mexican-American students. And I guess they rushed the board desk and chairs, the big podium where they sit, sort of like a semicircle or quarter circle. And the kids came in and pretty much overwhelmed the I got to say, fairly beefy old security cop that was there. He was trying to hold them back, but he couldn't. Kids took over all the chairs, just kind of like in the old days when we were kids. Remember those days? Maybe you don't. And why did these, as described, Mexican-American students bum rush a school board meeting and take over the dais? Because the school board decided to discontinue Chicano studies. It's out. We don't need to teach that drivel anymore. Okay. So good. That's called punching the Nazis. All right? You punch the Nazis in a lot of different ways. Okay? Well, I understand that. Especially when they say, oh, you're threatening violence by saying punch the Nazis. Well, excuse me. They started it first. Okay? These are counterpunches, lest you know. It might look like we're punching first, but no. No, this is not the basketball rules of life where whoever punches second is the guilty party. No. And lest anyone think that I am being comical about a Nazi takeover, calling this a Nazi takeover of America, it is. They did it before, and they're trying it again, and I got to tell you, they're getting to be a lot more successful this time than they were last. But people are fed up. What was heartening also is looking at the Shasta County city or county board meeting, where constituents were coming up and basically calling the board a bunch of QAnon Looney Tunes, 3% Proud Boy fascists, because that's what they are, because that's who took over the Shasta County Board of Supervisors. It is a very conservative part of California. They want to secede. There's been a lot of Russian influence there, and I'm not talking about, guys fishing back in the 1800s who just happened to land upon our shores. No, I'm talking about Vlad and his mob government right now. The mob government that puts out hits on Italian lawmakers, prosecutors. $9 million, I think, is what it was. $9 million hit. Mobsters do that. That's why it's a mob government. Okay. Then you got that Chinese billionaire busted. The one where who owns the yacht that Bannon was busted on, who then got pardoned by Trump. And I like how some of the media is saying, we're trying to figure out if there's some sort of connection between Bannon and this billionaire. Well, yeah, Bannon was busted on the guy's yacht. Do you think there's a connection there? That's old news. Come on. Do you think we're that stupid? They do. But we are not. And we like to remind ourselves, and that's important, but more importantly, we need to remind them. And that is another way to punch the Nazis. Never let them forget about their sins against humanity. Ever. Okay. All right. We ought to tell you what we have in store for you on this fabulous St. Paddy's Day. Yeah, driving the snakes out of Ireland. Where'd they go? I think they came here. Okay, we do have a great show for you in store. And at the top, McCarthy is willing to sacrifice the security of Congress to curry favor with MAGA and Fox, Tucker Carlson in particular. On the rest of the menu, Oregon will halt electric vehicle rebates for 1 year beginning this May due to high demand and dwindling funds. Michigan added LGBTQ protections to the state's civil rights law. And California will transform the infamous San Quentin prison, the one with the gas chamber. They're going to transform it into a lockup where less dangerous prisoners will receive education, training, and rehabilitation. Can we move against this retribution prison system and maybe back into rehabilitation so that people become useful members of society, whatever that is? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Guatemala arrested another former prosecutor, the latest in a series of detentions seen as weakening anti-corruption efforts in the country. Seems to be going around. And Tanzania's first woman president is on her first official visit to South Africa. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you for doing so, Kelly. To the left of that chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, and just down a tad, is the link to our Patreon page, and do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. It really does help us pay our bills. If you could afford an espresso type coffee drink, for instance, and send those funds our way once a month, it really does. It really does help us pay our bills, and they are ever increasing, never decreasing. So thank you for your generosity in helping us fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many years ago. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable at Justice Putnam. I incidentally post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos 10 minutes before showtime, and you can link up to the actual articles in which we are drawing such great inspiration from. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Alrighty. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on this fabulous Blue Moon Spirits Fridays is by staff at the Associated Press. Oregon will temporarily suspend rebates for buying or leasing an electric vehicle for a year, starting in May, because too many people are applying and the program is running out of money. A growing number of Oregonians are buying or leasing electric vehicles, with over 60,600 registered in the state. The Oregon Department of Environmental Quality announced on Wednesday the suspension of the Clean Vehicle Rebate Program that has dispersed more than $71 million over 5 years to help people buy or lease roughly 25,000 of those vehicles. A fifth of the rebates went to low and moderate income households, state data shows. Since the end of 2018, the state has offered 2 cash rebates for Oregon drivers who buy or lease electric vehicles or plug-in hybrids that are under $50,000. The standard rebate of up to $2,500 is available regardless of income and can be received at participating dealers. The charge ahead rebate of $5,000 is aimed at low or moderate income households and must be accessed via a mail-in application. The 2 rebates can be combined for up to $7,500 in cash back. Even though we're announcing a temporary suspension, it really shows the program is a victim of our own success, Rachel Sakata, Senior Air Quality Planner with the Environmental Quality Department, said. We are one of the top states in the nation in terms of percentage of EV sales. Oregon's Department of Transportation estimates that people will be driving 1.5 million electric vehicles in the state by 2035. About 3.2 million passenger vehicles are registered in Oregon today. Capoletti of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Hey, it's Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, affectionately known as Big Gretch, signed legislation codifying LGBTQ protections into the state civil rights law permanently outlawing discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity in the state. The legislation follows a state Supreme Court ruling last year that the Michigan's Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act, which outlaws discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodations, and education on the basis of sex, extended to sexual orientation as well. Whitmer's signature yesterday, Thursday, ensures that the High Court's ruling cannot be reversed in the future, and goes one step further in extending protections to include gender identity or expression. It comes at a time, Whitmer said, when there's a nationwide assault on our LGBTQ plus community, especially our trans neighbors, family, and friends. There are state legislatures across this country dedicating themselves to legalizing discrimination, Whitmer said. In Michigan, we will keep expanding freedoms and getting things done on the issues that actually make a difference in people's lives. Democrats took full control of the state government this year for the first time in 40 years and have worked quickly to undo decades of Republican measures. The Michigan legislature advanced a repeal of the state's right-to-work law earlier this week, and on Thursday yesterday, the Senate passed an 11-bill gun safety package. Sophie Austin of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The infamous state prison on San Francisco Bay that has been home to the largest death row population in the United States will be transformed into a lockup where less dangerous prisoners will receive education, training, and rehabilitation, California officials announced yesterday, Thursday. The inmates serving death sentences at San Quentin State Prison will be moved elsewhere in the California penitentiary system, Governor Gavin Newsom's office announced, and it will be renamed the San Quentin Rehabilitation Center. Most of California's nearly 700 inmates facing such sentences are imprisoned at the facility, though some have already been moved. Today, we take the next step in our pursuit of true rehabilitation, justice, and safer communities through this evidence-backed investment, creating a new model for safety and justice, the California model that will lead the nation, Newsom said in a statement. The governor planned to visit to San Quentin, which is also the California location where prisoners were once executed, though none have been put to death since 2006. Newsom announced a moratorium on executions in 2019 and dismantled the prison's gas chamber. In 2022, he announced plans to begin transferring inmates sentenced to death to other prisons. Full details of the plan were not immediately made public, though officials said the facility would concentrate on education, rehabilitation, and breaking cycles of crime. Newsom was expected to share more during his visit, the second stop on a 4-day policy tour that he's doing in lieu of the traditional State of the Union address this year. Newsom's office cited as a model Norway's approach to incarceration, which focuses on preparing people to return to society, an inspiration for the program. Oregon and North Dakota have also taken inspiration from the Scandinavian countries' policies. In maximum security Norwegian prisons, cells often look more like dorm rooms with additional furniture such as chairs, desks, even TVs, and prisoners have kitchen access and activities like basketball. The nation has one of the lowest recidivism rates in the world. Okay, that sounds like good news. Now let us go to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Tech Bro. Guy Ritchie's latest action comedy, Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre, doesn't waste any time getting the action going. Beginning and ending with a bang, the movie relies on Ritchie's tried-and-true formula of star ensemble, fast-paced action, and smart, twisty plot. Jason Statham stars as Orson Fortune, an agent contracted by the British government to track down and retrieve a stolen package known only as the Handle. Along with a team composed of a computer hacker named Sarah, played by a scene-stealing Aubrey Plaza, and an everyman named JJ, Fortune quickly realizes that this job isn't going to be as simple as he was thinking. In order to complete the mission, the team discovers that they will need the assistance of Danny, a slightly past his prime action star who reluctantly agrees to help only after being threatened with blackmail. As it turns out, the team needs Danny so they can get in physical contact with the mysterious tech entrepreneur turned philanthropist Greg, who apparently understands the Handle's significance. Greg, who's played by none other than Hugh Grant, looking like a cross between Bill Gates and the late Uber producer Robert Evans, quickly becomes the most memorable character in the film. Grant appears to be having a whale of a time bringing off this role and manages to make Greg more than a caricature. Each of his appearances are a treat. Add to this a tight script, on-point editing, and cinematography that takes full advantage of its multiple exotic locations, and Operation Fortune makes for an entertaining romp. It's arguably Ritchie's funniest movie in years, and maybe a good post-Oscars antidote for anyone looking for a fun, sunny movie to counter winter chill and heavy cinema. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Science Quickly, a podcast from Scientific American. I'm Stefano Montali. If I asked you to visualize, say, Harry Potter, you'd probably have no problem picturing him in your mind. A teenage wizard with black hair, glasses, a thunderbolt-shaped scar on his forehead, and a wand in his hand. It would almost be as if you were pulling up a photograph in your head. This ability to visualize is often called the mind's eye, and most people would say it's as inherent as breathing. But it turns out that's not quite true. Estimates say about 1% of the population live with an extreme form of a condition called aphantasia. Those who have it can't visualize anything in their head.
So when they try and imagine and think about what an apple looks like, it's just nothing. It's black on black. For example, when I think about an apple, I can capture a conscious experience of an apple. I can see the stem, I can see a leaf, I can see a drop of water on there. It's not like holding an apple in my hand, but I have an experience of an apple.
Joel Pearson is a professor of cognitive neuroscience and director of the Future Minds Lab at the University of New South Wales in Australia. He's been studying mental imagery, including in the context of aphantasia and cognition, since 2008. One of the main questions, he says, has always been finding a way to accurately measure it.
Back then, almost no one, there was only a few people studying visual imagery because it was so hard to measure, right? It was just questionnaires and maybe an interview. The problem with questionnaires is that you and me could both imagine an apple and our imagery could be exactly the same, but I might rate it a 4 and you might rate it a 1, right? Even though we consciously, internally experience the exact same thing, or vice versa. Maybe we have totally different imagery and both rate it as 2. So that's kind of the inherent problem of metacognition when it comes to questionnaires. So a lot of what we do at Future Minds Lab is trying to develop new ways of measuring the mind, objective, reliable ways, like a microscope for the mind or a blood test to measure the mind.
One of the lab's experiments explored how a lack of mental imagery affects the way people with aphantasia respond in a hypothetical stressful situation.
We did another experiment, which was having people come into a dark room and read these scary stories on the screen. We found that people with imagery, when we measure their skin conductance response, get this nice escalating response during the story. Those with aphantasia get sort of a flatlining, bumpy. Whereas if we show both those group scary images on the screen, both groups go up. So when it's perceptual, no real difference. When it's words on the screen, a role for mental imagery, there's a clear difference.
Building on this research, Pearson and his team then recruited people with aphantasia from the Sydney, Australia area to come to the lab for another experiment. This time, he asked the participants to imagine a dark object and then a light one.
Your pupil contracts when you're imagining the bright thing, just like it does if I look up at the light. People with imagery, the pupil is different in the light condition. No imagery with aphantasia. There's no real difference there.
For a person to be able to volunteer for this type of experiment, they first have to realize that they have aphantasia. But how do you know that you can't visualize if you don't even know that other people can? Quite often, Pearson says the epiphany takes place in a meditation class.
The teacher will be saying, now picture this and picture that, and I'll be getting more and more frustrated saying, they keep saying that. What do they mean? I can't picture that. I compare it to people discovering they're colorblind. They just don't know what they're missing until someone describes somehow the vivid experience of color. Then they go, oh, wait, what?
On a brighter note, though, there are many successful creative people that live with the condition. Pixar co-founder Ed Catmull is one. Glenn Keane, a character animator behind films such as The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, is another. So is there a connection between imagery, aphantasia, and creativity?
I had lots of emails from people saying, oh my God, I've realized I have aphantasia. That's why I'm not creative. In fact, we're running a creativity study now here in Future Minds. And again, the data does not support any difference in creativity measures for those with aphantasia. So even though people tend to sort of have some intuition, they think that there should be a lack of creativity in aphantasia, the data just doesn't support that so far.
Living without mental imagery might seem like a disadvantage, but Pearson says there are benefits as well, especially in terms of those living with anxiety disorders such as post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD.
All the data we have so far suggests that the more vivid your imagery is, the more prone you are to develop PTSD after a trauma. Things around anxiety are going to be different and less without imagery.
But what about good memories? Do they stick around? Pearson says yes, just in a bit of a different way.
That can take on a number of different semantics, ideas, concepts, spatial locations, emotions, and sometimes different senses. You can break aphantasia up into multisensory aphantasia, so it's blind across all the senses, or pure visual aphantasia. So why people's lifelong memories have less details if they have aphantasia, they're still there. It's not catastrophic. The memories aren't lost.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific Americans, Science Quickly, I'm Stefano Montali.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work. Sorry, I'm late. Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi. Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, Give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Exciting news, people! Utopia is on the rise. Space Commander Elon Musk has announced that His Magnificence, i.e. him, intends to construct his very own private town on 3,500 acres of farmland near his new Tesla plant southeast of Austin, Texas. More than a town, Musk explains that he will create utopia in Texas, promising an ecological paradise where his Tesla workers can live and do fun things like swimming, pickleball, and paying rent to him. The gabillionaire is certainly rich enough to erect his own Muskopolis, but alas, the Utopia name is already taken. Indeed, I've been to Utopia, Texas, a small town west of San Antonio that was founded in 1855 by, cover your ears, Elon, Swiss socialists. Of course, history shows that a company town is ruled by the company, not by residents, much less socialists. And Musk has made clear at Tesla, Twitter, etc., that his personal whims rule over workers, consumers, our environment, and even truth. Which brings us to that ecological workers' paradise he's promising. Even as one arm of his empire was extolling his vision of a Garden of Eden situated along the beauty of the Colorado River, another arm was scheming to pollute it. Musk is asking Texas corporate control regulators to let him use the site to dump 140,000 gallons a day of his industrial wastewater into the Colorado. Excuse me, but that turns Elon's ecological paradise into a fraud. Worse, it adds up to Musk pouring 50 million gallons a year of his waste into the river, fouling the main water source for dozens of towns and hundreds of farms downstream. This is Jim Hightower saying Musk wants to extend the long sordid history in our country of company town hucksters, and his latest Texas scam is proof that we should never trust a billionaire promising us paradise. Howdy-ho, folks, and thanks for tuning in to my Hightower radio commentaries. And guess what? There's even more Hightower waiting for you online. Subscribers to my Substack newsletter, Jim Hightower's Lowdown, get commentaries, articles, interviews with progressive sparklies, live events, historical nuggets, and more. Go to jimhightower.substack.com to sign up, and you'll get more. That's jimhightower.substack.com.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1890. That was the day that the Executive Council of the American Federation of Labor decided that the Carpenters Union should lead a national campaign for the 8-hour workday. The cry, 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will, had been on the lips of working people for more than 20 years. The fight for a fair workday had gained momentum in the mid-1880s. But in 1886, the Haymarket tragedy had taken its toll on the cause. When an unknown person threw a bomb at a workers' rally in Chicago, government officials used it as a pretext to clamp down hard against the labor movement. The decision by the American Federation of Labor to pick back up the call for the 8-hour day revitalized this workers' campaign. The choice of the carpenters to lead the way made sense. As skilled craftsmen, their labor would not be easily replaced. This gave them the leverage to stand up and demand an 8-hour workday. Their president, P.J. McGuire, was also a vocal supporter of reducing the long hours required of so many workers. In 1890, he said, "We are not a narrow, selfish trade organization entirely for ourselves. We have been and always will be ready to do our share in the general labor movement, whether it be to help the poorest or the highest paid worker." That May, 53,000 carpenters from 208 locals took part in 141 strikes. As a result, their actions saw gains in more than 30 cities as they won the 8-hour day. In many more, they won a 9-hour workday. The movement helped to strengthen the Carpenters Union and to continue the fight for better wages, hours, and conditions. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays on this fabulous St. Patrick's Day. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 29 degrees Fahrenheit with icy fog. How about that? Expecting a high of around 62, though. Generally cloudy, winds light and variable throughout the day. A few clouds overnight with lows in the low to mid 30s. It's warming up. Winds light and variable. A mix of clouds tomorrow and sun early. Highs around 64. We'll see about that. Wow. Then becoming cloudy later in the day, winds light and variable, and rain developing overnight tomorrow night. Pollen is still rated as none here in the little town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is up now in the moderate range at 59 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is in its moderate range at level 3. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.18 inches. Visibility is down to a quarter mile, and relative humidity is at 99%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 58 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris is 60 degrees and mostly cloudy. Rome is 61 and sunny. Kyiv is 38 and cloudy. Kabul is 50 degrees and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 70 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 50 degrees with heavy rain showers. Sydney, Australia is 72 and partly cloudy. San Francisco is 48 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York, New York is 53 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. This first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays is brought to us by staff at the Associated Press. Guatemala's government arrested former prosecutor Orlando Salvador Lopez on abuse of authority charges yesterday, Thursday, the latest in a series of detentions seen as weakening anti-corruption efforts in the country. Lopez was best known for having brought to trial late dictator Jose Efren Rios Montt in 2013 for genocide committed against indigenous Guatemalans during the country's 1960 to 1996 Civil War. Rios Montt was convicted and sentenced to 80 years, but the verdict was overturned on appeal. Lopez's arrest, announced yesterday on Thursday, was the most recent in a series of prosecutions of former prosecutors and investigators by the president Alejandro Giammattei. The public prosecutor's office claims Lopez did work as a notary public and lawyer in 2019 at a time when he was employed as a prosecutor, something that is not allowed in Guatemala. The U.S. government has sharply criticized the weakening of anti-corruption efforts in Guatemala under Giammattei. Some 30 judges, magistrates, and prosecutors involved in the investigation or processing of those corruption cases have been forced to flee the country after facing legal action from the current administration. Juan Papier, the acting deputy director for the Americas at Human Rights Watch, said the arrest of Lopez was a serious affront. His arrest, Papier said, is part of a pattern of prosecution against prosecutors and judges who investigated corruption and human rights abuses in the country.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Mogamotse Magome of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu Hassan, on a state visit to South Africa, has urged more security, cooperation, and trade between the two countries. Hassan, Tanzania's first woman leader, they call it female here at AP. Hey, AP, update your style manual. The first woman leader of Tanzania met South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in the capital Pretoria yesterday, Thursday, where her delegation of cabinet ministers discussed trade opportunities and possible agreements with their South African counterparts. This is Hassan's first official visit to South Africa since she became president of Tanzania following the death of her predecessor, John Magufuli, in 2021. Ramaphosa said trade volumes between Tanzania and South Africa continue to increase, but could be improved further. A key aspect of our bilateral cooperation is the promotion of trade and investment between our two countries, Ramaphosa said. He also said among the industries under discussion at the business forum are agriculture and agro-processing, oil and gas, mining, and infrastructure development. The two leaders also noted their countries' long-standing relations stretching back to the anti-colonial struggle. Many South African anti-apartheid activists who fled the country under persecution from the repressive white minority government or to join the African National Congress's underground armed movement found refuge and received military training in Tanzania. Among global challenges, the leaders noted the effect of the Russian invasion of Ukraine on African nations, including the interruption of the supply of agricultural-related products such as fertilizers, which have exacerbated the continent's food security situation problems. Hassan is set to host United States Vice President Kamala Harris when she visits Africa at the end of March, as the U.S. continues its outreach to African nations. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.